Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If copy system in Naruto. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 421, This isn't just holding back, it's throwing the fight. Susanoo. A black Susanoo, towering over 100 meters tall, stood beneath the descending Chibaku Tensei. I'm standing right here, you know. Are you trying to crush me? Shin said calmly. The Susanoo drew a katana from its back and slashed upwards at the celestial body. With a single swing, a sword aura that seemed to cleave the sky shot upwards, splitting into 8 distinct blades and tearing apart Nagato's Chibaku Tensei. Is that Shin Uzumaki? Jiraiya, who had been awaiting his death with closed eyes, stared in stunned silence at the black, perfect Susanoo. He'd seen Shin's Susanoo during the Second Shinobi World War. Though it had been over 20 years, the sight was still familiar. Super Shinra Tensei. Nagato's cold, emotionless gaze fixed on Shin's perfect Susanoo. A violent repulsive force erupted once more. So he's really lost it. Attacking me too? Shin, who had been about to dismiss his Susanoo, was taken aback. He'd just been sharpening his sword on the Chibaku Tensei. Was there really a need to attack him? Since he had attacked, Shin would naturally respond. This level of Chibaku Tensei is pathetic. Shin controlled the Susanoo, swinging its katana. The clouds in the sky parted before his slash. For a moment, it felt as if Shin's blade was the only thing in existence. Boom! Nagato, floating in the sky, was sent flying like a rubber ball, struck by the Susanoo's single slash. Not bad. My swordsmanship seems to have improved again, Shin said with a smile. Jiraiya, you should thank me. If it weren't for me, Konoha would cease to exist. Then again, it seems it already has. Shin dismissed his Susanoo and walked over to Jiraiya. Why? Jiraiya looked at Shin, puzzled. Knowing Shin Uzumaki, he wasn't the type to help others out of pure kindness. No reason. You should focus on rebuilding Konoha. Shin turned and walked away, leaving Jiraiya staring after him. Jiraiya's assessment of Shin was correct. Shin wasn't the type to help others. The reason he'd intervened this time was for Tsunade. Although she had claimed to sever all ties with Konoha, Shin knew she would be heartbroken if the village was truly destroyed. The village was, after all, the legacy of the Senju clan, her grandfather's life's work. As a man, he couldn't let his woman be unhappy. Besides, for Shin, it was a trivial matter. Thank you, Jiraiya said, spitting out a mouthful of blood, then looked in the direction Shin had left and offered his sincere thanks. Regardless of Shin Uzumaki's motives, his actions had saved Konoha. Of course, the current Konoha was a shadow of its former self. The number of ninja had been drastically reduced, and more than half the villagers were dead. Only those who had been evacuated to the shelters had survived. The loss of villagers was one thing, but the loss of ninja, over half of Konoha's shinobi force had perished, and most of the survivors were genin. They had only survived because they were in the shelters, otherwise, they would have suffered a far worse fate. Shin, after leaving, appeared before the unconscious Nagato, who had been sent flying by his slash. Nagato's hair was now white, his face wrinkled, he looked as if he had aged 20 years. Super Shinra Tensei and Chibaku Tensei had consumed Nagato's life force, leaving him in this decrepit state. Be grateful I held back, otherwise, there wouldn't even be a body left. Shin felt he had held back too much with that last slash. This wasn't just holding back, it was practically throwing the fight. Though Nagato had survived thanks to Shin's mercy, he was crippled. In his current state, who could he even fight? He probably couldn't even handle a Kage-level opponent now. If he dared to use his Rinnegan again, he'd likely kill himself without anyone else needing to lift a finger. This attack on Konoha, what a mess. Didn't even get the 9 tails, and the Akatsuki is wiped out. Shin hadn't expected this outcome. Who would have thought Guy's willpower would be so strong? If Guy hadn't intervened, capturing the 9 tails wouldn't have been difficult, and the Akatsuki would have suffered no losses. Now, the only Akatsuki members left were Obito and Zetsu. Nagato was crippled. As for Shin, well, if you wanted to rely on Shin to get things done, that would be difficult. He only acted when he felt like it. Deidara and Kakuzu, who hadn't died earlier, were killed by Nagato's Berserk Super Shinra Tensei. Kakuzu's 5 hearts couldn't save him. Deidara was also unlucky enough to die at Nagato's hands. Truly, Nagato was a harbinger of death and destruction. Without exaggeration, Nagato had killed more people than Shin had in the entire Shinobi World War. Oh, you're here. And you saved your best buddy. Shin heard footsteps behind him and knew who it was. The only one who would appear here now was Obito. Obito was lucky. If 8 Gates Guy had targeted him first, Obito would be dead. Obito was unharmed. Kamui's intangibility made him immune. His body was in another dimension, so even the most powerful Shinra Tensei couldn't hurt him. However, Obito was still in shock. It hadn't been long, yet the Akatsuki had been reduced to such a pathetic state. At this moment, Obito realized the Akatsuki had no one left to use. Nagato was practically crippled. Zetsu was best at intelligence gathering, with no combat ability. Shin Uzumaki was powerful enough, but because he was too powerful, he couldn't be commanded. In Obito's mind, Shin Uzumaki wasn't even considered a part of the Akatsuki. This is so frustrating. Obito felt a wave of exhaustion. He had become a commander with no soldiers. If he had known attacking Konoha would lead to this, he would have stopped it. But it was too late for regrets now. From now on, the entire Akatsuki would likely rely on him to support it. Or he'd have to recruit new members. Thinking of recruitment, Obito's eyes lit up slightly. There were people he could recruit. For example, Itachi Uchiha's younger brother, Sasuke Uchiha. He might be a good addition. His strength was sufficient. According to White Zetsu's intel, he had already awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. If used well, he could become the sharpest blade in Obito's hands. Nagato Uzumaki is all yours. Shin glanced at the contemplative Obito and said. Then Shin left, not caring what Obito would do with Nagato. Even if he killed him, it didn't matter to Shin. He had no relationship with Nagato. After Shin left, Obito looked down at Nagato, deep in thought. He had initially planned to kill Nagato and retrieve the Rinnegan. But after a moment of consideration, Obito decided against it. Perhaps Nagato was still useful. He'd let him live for now. Chapter 422, Is there a reward? I'm home. Aren't you going to welcome me? Shin returned home and shouted loudly. What are you howling about? Who would welcome you? You're lucky we don't beat you up, Kushina glared at Shin and retorted unhappily. Oh? Kushina, you want to fight me? Shin cracked his knuckles and walked towards Kushina. She's gotten bold. Time to remind her who's in charge. Don't come over here. I was just kidding. Kushina took a few cautious steps back, then grabbed Makoto and used her as a shield, hiding behind her. Look at your so-called best friend Makoto. Using you as a shield. How heartless, Tsunade said to Makoto, enjoying the drama. Conan looked at Tsunade, speechless. Aren't you just trying to stir up trouble between Kushina and Makoto? Tsunade's instigation was unnecessary. Kushina and Makoto had already realized their friendship was more like plastic, fragile and easily broken. Tsunade, I have some big news. Want to hear it? Shin temporarily ignored Kushina, planning to discipline her later. Perhaps tonight would be a good time. He'd make sure Kushina unlocked even more new poses, otherwise, he'd walk backward from now on. Kushina, seeing Shin back off, was about to celebrate when she suddenly felt a shiver. Is Shin planning some kind of cruel revenge? What important thing do you want to tell me? Tsunade asked Shin curiously. Ahem, I'm a bit thirsty after coming back from outside. And this shoulder is a little sore. Shin sat down in the main seat and complained loudly. Tsunade clenched her fists. Clever as she was, how could she not understand Shin's meaning? Fine. To satisfy her curiosity, she will serve him this once. Just as Tsunade's hand reached for the teapot, a smaller hand beat her to it. Shin-sama, are you thirsty? Please drink some water. Karen diligently poured Shin a cup of tea, then ran behind him to massage his shoulders. Tsunade looked at the diligent Karen and smiled. Sigh. Shin sighed slightly. Compared to this, Shin would have preferred seeing Tsunade serve him tea and massage his shoulders. Did I not do a good job? Karen asked Shin, hearing his sigh. No, Karen, you did great. Shin felt Karen was definitely cut out to be a maid. Now, tell me what's going on. Tsunade nudged Shin's shoulder. Tsunade hated cliffhangers. If her curiosity wasn't satisfied, she probably wouldn't be able to sleep. Alright, I'll tell you. It's not good news. Konoha was almost destroyed. Well, it is mostly destroyed. Shin didn't keep her in suspense any longer. If he did, Tsunade might just use her monstrous strength to punch him. Shin had no masochistic tendencies, he didn't want to be treated violently. Tsunade's expression stiffened slightly, then she shook her head. I've already left Konoha. Whatever happens to the village has nothing to do with me anymore. Though Tsunade acted nonchalant, Shin could see a trace of sorrow deep in her eyes. After all, she had grown up in Konoha, and the village had been founded by her grandfather and the Senju clan. Her feelings for Konoha naturally ran deep. Even after so many years away, which had diluted her feelings, hearing the news still made her a little sad. Actually, I haven't finished my story. Konoha should have been completely destroyed, beyond saving. But in the end, I stepped in and saved it. Though the losses were heavy, at least it won't be wiped off the map. Shin took a sip of water and said to Tsunade. You did that on purpose, didn't you? Tsunade gritted her teeth, looking at Shin. She was truly angered by him. Hey, Tsunade, don't be angry. I really didn't mean to upset you. Shin quickly waved his hands, signaling Tsunade to calm down. Tsunade, look, I helped Konoha out once, purely for your sake. So, shouldn't you give me some kind of reward? After a while, once Tsunade had calmed down, Shin hinted to her. No, this was more than a hint. You want a reward from me? You must be dreaming. Tsunade glanced at Shin, gave him a big eye roll, and then ignored him. No way, Tsunade. You're so heartless. Do you know how cold my heart feels hearing you say that? Shin grabbed Tsunade's hand and placed it on his chest. Do you feel it? Isn't it freezing cold? Shin asked Tsunade. Don't think I don't know you're using ice release. Tsunade pulled back her cold little hand and slapped Shin playfully. Really no reward at all? Look how pitiful I am. Nothing at all? Shin looked at Tsunade with pitiful eyes. Stop being pathetic. It's disgusting. Tsunade huffed lightly, though her mood had improved significantly. It didn't matter if Konoha suffered heavy losses, as long as it wasn't wiped off the map. Otherwise, her ancestors' life's work would have been in vain. Though she claimed to have severed ties with Konoha, Tsunade didn't want to see it truly destroyed. Shin wore a frustrated expression. After dinner, Tsunade suddenly walked over to Shin, tugged on his clothes, glanced towards her room, and then returned to her room. Shin's eyes lit up slightly. It seemed there was a reward after all. The thing he'd been waiting for was about to happen. He had originally planned to discipline Kushina today, but forget it. Tomorrow would be the same. Kushina should be glad she escaped today. But just because she escaped today didn't mean she could escape tomorrow or the day after, unless Shin completely forgot about it. Shin came to Tsunade's room, walking over to her with a grin. Seeing Shin enter, Tsunade blushed slightly and told Shin to close the door, and to close it tightly. Otherwise, what if someone came over to eavesdrop or peek? She had to be prepared. Karen, for example, had a history of that. Chapter 423, Still Fighting Amongst Yourselves? The Akatsuki's attack on Konoha sent shockwaves through the shinobi world. Konoha was in the midst of rebuilding. The villagers' faces were etched with sorrow. This was the most devastating blow Konoha had suffered since its founding. Danzo, where were you when the Akatsuki attacked? And the two elders, where were you? Jiraiya questioned Danzo, Hamura Mitokado, and Koharu Udatain, his voice sharp with accusation. During Konoha's crisis, Danzo and the others were nowhere to be found. Now that the dust had settled, they conveniently reappeared. Jiraiya, watch your tone, Danzo said, his voice devoid of emotion. Jiraiya was so enraged by Danzo's nonchalant response that he almost choked. He was already severely injured, his condition was not good. Remember, you are the Hokage. Konoha has just faced a major crisis. You should be the one giving everyone an explanation. Danzo stared at Jiraiya. His goal was to oust the injured Jiraiya and seize the Hokage position for himself. Even with Konoha in its current state, Danzo was confident he could lead the village to glory. Danzo always possessed a strange, misplaced confidence. In reality, he was far from capable. If the shattered Konoha were entrusted to Danzo, its complete destruction wouldn't be far off. An explanation? Jiraiya was furious. He was the one demanding answers, and Danzo had the audacity to ask him for an explanation? Jiraiya didn't deny his own responsibility. The Akatsuki's leader was his former student. As Hokage, he was ultimately responsible for the village's losses. But now, he was confronting Danzo and the two elders. When Konoha was on the brink of annihilation, they were nowhere to be seen. Do they care about anything other than power? Is Konoha worthless to them? Jiraiya felt a chill in his heart. Jiraiya, Koharu and I were evacuating the villagers, Hamura Mitokado stated flatly. Bullshit. Jiraiya didn't believe a single word. Evacuating villagers? He was certain they had been hiding somewhere safe. Jiraiya, you're no longer fit to be Hokage. You should focus on recovering, Danzo said to Jiraiya. Upon hearing this, Hamura and Koharu's expressions changed slightly. They didn't want to remove Jiraiya as Hokage. They knew Danzo's motive was to take the position for himself. That was unacceptable. The disaster that befell Konoha can't be entirely blamed on Jiraiya. I think Jiraiya should continue as Hokage, Koharu Udatain said. Indeed. I agree, Hamura Mitokado immediately concurred. You too, are you really going to oppose me? A ruthless glint flashed in Danzo's eyes. This was his last chance to become Hokage. If he missed this opportunity, he might never get another. He was old, he didn't know how much longer he had to live. If he failed now, he'd never achieve his lifelong ambition. Danzo's killing intent flared. If these two old fools stood in his way again, he'd send them to join Hiruzen Sarutobi. Hamura and Koharu sensed Danzo's killing intent. It was a chilling realization. Knowing Danzo, he would act on his threats. Since he had murderous intent, he would definitely try to kill them. However, they still didn't back down and support Danzo. The outcome would be the same. Even if they supported Danzo and he became Hokage, he would eventually find a way to eliminate them. They would have to be extremely careful around Danzo from now on. Dying at Danzo's hands would be a truly tragic end. In the end, Jiraiya's questioning was futile. No one was held accountable. Danzo, Hamura, and Koharu all walked away unscathed. Watching them leave, Jiraiya's face was as dark as a thundercloud. They were a cancer, hindering Konoha's recovery. But he couldn't do anything about them. At least he had managed to hold on to the Hokage position. That was something. It wasn't that Jiraiya loved the position, but if Danzo became Hokage, the consequences would be unimaginable. Danzo returned to the root base, his face even darker, his killing intent palpable. You old geezers. You forced my hand. Being blocked by Hamura and Koharu again had pushed Danzo over the edge. He had to kill them, no matter what. Yamanakafu, Aburame Toryun, go kill Hamura Midokado and Koharu Utatane. Remember, don't be discovered. If possible, make it look like Jiraiya did it. Danzo summoned his two strongest subordinates and gave them their orders. Even now, with Konoha in ruins, Danzo was still focused on internal strife. He truly was a special kind of talent. Yes, Lord Danzo. Fu and Toryun left with a team of root operatives. No one in Konoha knew about the internal turmoil brewing while they were busy rebuilding. Other hidden villages were watching Konoha closely, hoping to take advantage of its weakness. But they had their own problems. The Akatsuki had captured their Jinchuriki, no village could let that slide. Well, Kirigakure was an exception. The Three Tails had been a wild-tailed beast, captured by Shin after it wandered onto his territory. As for the Six Tails Jinchuriki, he had already become a missing nin, so Kirigakure wasn't directly involved. And with Hayashi Hyuga now the Mizukage, their past animosity with the Akatsuki was gone. Hayashi Hyuga chose to remain a bystander to Konoha's misfortune. Not kicking them while they were down was already a kindness. As for the Akatsuki, Nagato, though not dead, was a frail shadow of his former self, unable to exert much power. Obito had already abandoned him. Nagato was useless now. The only reason he was still alive was because Obito had some lingering use for him. Once Nagato was truly worthless, Obito would be the first to kill him. He definitely wanted Nagato's pair of Rinnegan. Chapter 424, Finding Nawaki to take over Konoha? Why did you come to the land of whirlpools? Are you here to thank me specifically? Shin asked Jiraiya. He wondered what wind had blown Jiraiya here today. And he had come specifically to find Shin. Actually, I'm here to ask for a favor, Jiraiya said. Shin had already guessed as much. Jiraiya must have needed something. Otherwise, with Konoha in such a mess, how could he have time to come here? Then let's not waste time here. Let's go. Shin immediately issued a dismissal order. But... Hey! Didn't you hear him? Shin-sama has already asked you to leave. Do you want me to throw you out? Karen threatened Jiraiya, shaking her fist. Jiraiya couldn't help but smile wryly. Even though he is injured, a little girl threatening him? Actually, even if Jiraiya wasn't injured, Karen would still threaten him. Not just because Shin was behind her, but in terms of strength, Jiraiya was no match for Karen. Under Shin's tutelage, Karen's strength had reached Super Kage level. She had also mastered Sage Mode. However, Jiraiya couldn't see that. He didn't know how strong the Karen before him truly was. Shin, please, I really need your help with something. It's a simple matter for you, Jiraiya bowed deeply to Shin, a formal gesture of utmost respect. Shin-sama, should I throw him out? Karen asked Shin. She was deeply resentful of Jiraiya. Her precious time with Shin was being interrupted by him. If she didn't know he was acquainted with Shin, she would have already sent him to the afterlife with a single punch. Alright, tell me what you need first. I'll consider it after I hear you out, Shin said, looking at Jiraiya for a moment. Phew! Jiraiya breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Shin was willing to listen, that was enough. He had been afraid Shin would just kick him out without hearing a word. That would have been too embarrassing. It's like this. I'm trying to find Nawaki, but I don't know where he is. So I wanted to ask for your help. It really wasn't a major issue. Jiraiya wanted to find Nawaki but couldn't, so he came here to ask Shin for help. Can't you have Konoha ninja look for him? Shin looked at Jiraiya. If Jiraiya ordered a full-scale search, they would definitely find Nawaki. It's not that I don't want to, but with Konoha's current situation, we can't spare the manpower, Jiraiya said with a wry smile. Then why are you looking for Nawaki? Shin asked, frowning. Though he didn't think Jiraiya would harm Nawaki, Shin still wanted to be clear about the situation before agreeing to help. Alright, I'll be honest with you. I'm looking for Nawaki because I want him to become Hokage. Shin couldn't help but laugh. Nawaki was still a missing nin. Asking him to become Hokage? This was ridiculous. Don't laugh. Konoha is truly in a desperate situation right now. I'm severely injured and can't continue to lead. Jiraiya pointed to his injuries. His strength was only a tenth of what it used to be. Konoha is a mess right now. You're asking Nawaki to clean it up for you? You're quite the schemer. Shin looked at Jiraiya calmly. With Konoha in its current state, whoever became Hokage would be unlucky. How could one person solve so many problems? Besides Danzo, who was obsessed with becoming Hokage, no one would be willing to take on this mess. They were just looking for someone to take the fall. Can you take me to see Nawaki? I'll talk to him personally. Jiraiya said with a wry smile. Alright, I'll take you to see Nawaki. Shin knew Nawaki's childhood dream was to become Hokage. He wondered if that dream still held. If it did, Shin wouldn't stop him from taking the position. Karen, go tell Kushina and Tsunade I'll be back soon, Shin turned and said to Karen. You're not taking me with you? Karen's face showed disappointment, then she shot Jiraiya a fierce glare. Jiraiya was bewildered. He didn't understand why she was so hostile. But he knew women were best avoided, so he said nothing. Let's go. Shin opened a spatial gate with Yamatsu Hirasaka and stepped through. Jiraiya looked at the black portal, hesitating. Was it safe to enter? But Shin had already entered. He couldn't possibly harm him, could he? If Shin wanted to harm him, he wouldn't need any tricks. When Jiraiya passed through, Shin was already chatting with Nawaki. Who's there? Nawaki warily looked at Jiraiya emerging from the spatial gate. Seeing it wasn't Tsunade, he breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness it's not my sister. Nawaki was terrified of Tsunade. If she came, she'd definitely pester him about getting a girlfriend. Nawaki didn't even want to think about that topic right now. Well, here's the guy who wants you to take over his mess, Shin said. Nawaki looked at Shin, completely clueless about what he meant. Let me explain. Jiraiya wants you to become Hokage, Shin said simply to Nawaki. Become Hokage? Seriously? You're not kidding, are you? Nawaki couldn't believe it. He felt Shin was messing with him. How could that be? He was still a Konoha missing nin. Bomb! Shin punched Nawaki on the head. Would I lie to you? Have I ever lied to you before? I was just asking. Why'd you have to hit me? You're as violent as my sister, Nawaki said, rubbing his sore head. I'll be sure to tell Tsunade what you said. I wonder if she'll make a special trip to see you, Shin said with a faint smile. Don't. Please don't. My good brother-in-law, please don't get me killed. Nawaki pleaded with Shin in terror. If Tsunade heard he called her violent, she'd beat him up for sure. Alright, I won't tell her. Now let go of my hand. Shin looked with disgust at Nawaki, who was clinging to his sleeve. If it were a beautiful woman, Shin wouldn't mind at all. But a burly man? Shin was utterly repulsed. Chapter 425, Nawaki's Decision, Returning to Konoha. After Shin and Nawaki talked for a while, Jiraiya was finally able to interject and explain the situation to Nawaki in more detail. Shin had only given him a brief overview. Jiraiya provided a more thorough explanation. Nawaki, for the sake of the Senju clan's legacy, I hope you'll return to Konoha and become Hokage. I'm still a missing nin, Nawaki frowned, reminding Jiraiya. That's not a problem at all. I can have your missing nin status revoked, Jiraiya said quickly. For Jiraiya, such a small matter was not a concern. Nawaki fell silent. After a long moment, he looked up at Shin. Shin, what do you think I should choose? Nawaki couldn't make up his mind, so he wanted Shin to advise him. You want me to choose for you? Nawaki, you're a grown man now. Learn to make your own decisions, Shin said, exasperated. However, when Nawaki asked for Shin's opinion, Shin could already guess Nawaki's inclination. Nawaki still wants to be Hokage. If Nawaki had no such intention, he wouldn't have asked for Shin's advice, he would have refused directly. Nawaki, let me remind you first. Konoha's situation is particularly dire. Over half the ninja have been killed, and most of the dead were elite. Konoha's strength is now at the bottom of the 5 great villages. Shin explained Konoha's situation to Nawaki. How did that happen? Nawaki's expression changed. Konoha was supposed to be the #1 hidden village, how had it become so miserable? Konoha was attacked by the Akatsuki, which is why the losses were so heavy. The village is still in the process of rebuilding. Jiraiya heard Shin explain Konoha's situation and added with a helpless look, Konoha is indeed a mess. Even I can't handle it. Tricking Nawaki into going back was impossible, so he could only be honest and appeal to his emotions. And Nawaki, let me tell you, this mess in Konoha is exhausting. If you can avoid it, it's best not to get involved. Shin gave Nawaki one last reminder. Whether Nawaki would listen was up to him. Nawaki was no longer a child, he had the right to make his own choices. Let him choose for himself. Jiraiya looked at Shin with frustration. With Shin here, the chances of Nawaki becoming Hokage seemed to have dropped several times. Nawaki was still struggling, completely unsure of what to choose. Nawaki, looking at you, it seems you want to go back and be the Hokage, don't you? Shin couldn't stand watching Nawaki struggle anymore. If Nawaki had no intention of becoming Hokage, he wouldn't have hesitated for so long without refusing Jiraiya. Nawaki scratched his head at Shin's words. Shin was right deep down, he really wanted to go back. Actually, if you want to go back, it's not impossible. But you should set some conditions. Shin didn't want to see him struggle anymore. Since he wanted to be Hokage, let him follow his heart. What conditions? Nawaki and Jiraiya asked Shin at the same time. Danzo. Have you thought about how to deal with Danzo? Make his elimination a condition for your return. That's right. That bastard. Nawaki clenched his fists. His near-death experience and becoming a missing nin were all tied to Danzo. For years, Nawaki had wanted to kill Danzo but never had the chance. And Nawaki didn't want to rely on Shin's power, he wanted to kill Danzo with his own strength. That, Jiraiya's face showed hesitation. Jiraiya, you need to understand. Even if Nawaki agrees to go back, if Danzo isn't dealt with, Nawaki still won't be able to become Hokage. Shin believed Jiraiya understood what kind of person Danzo was. He should know what Shin meant. Danzo would definitely disagree and vehemently oppose it. It would even be a question of whether Jiraiya could clear Nawaki's name as a missing nin. Alright, let's get rid of Danzo. A ruthless glint flashed in Jiraiya's eyes. This was all for Konoha. And it would be good if that guy Danzo died. Nawaki, have you decided? Jiraiya looked at Nawaki seriously. Alright, I've decided to return to Konoha. Nawaki had made up his mind. He was already leaning towards returning to Konoha to become Hokage, which was why he agreed so readily. After making the decision, Nawaki felt a sense of relief, a great comfort. This is your own decision. I hope you don't regret it later. Not that you'll have the chance. Shin said to Nawaki. From the moment Nawaki agreed to go back, there was no turning back. It was his choice, no matter how difficult, he had to see it through. Anyway, Shin felt that taking over the mess in Konoha was definitely not a good job. In Shin's view, Nawaki's choice wasn't a good one. I won't regret it, Nawaki said seriously. Since Nawaki had said so, what more could he say? Anyway, if he regretted it later, it wasn't Shin's business. By the way, if you run into trouble in the future, try not to come to me. Hearing Shin's words, Nawaki's expression froze. He looked at Shin with frustration. He had originally thought that if he ran into trouble, he could ask Shin for help. But now, Shin's words had blocked that path. What could he do? Then can you come with me to Konoha? Nawaki asked Shin. Nawaki wasn't stupid. If he went back alone, he'd still be a bit uneasy. He could trust Jiraiya, but not completely. It was a contradictory feeling. Jiraiya was someone you could trust, but not fully. All right. Who made you my brother-in-law? I'll do it for Tsunade's sake. Shin didn't refuse Nawaki. Thank you so much, Shin. Nawaki was overjoyed. With Shin agreeing to go with him to Konoha, Nawaki felt much more at ease. I feel like you don't trust me. Do you think I'd harm you? Jiraiya looked at Nawaki with frustration. He felt this kid didn't trust him at all. Also, Jiraiya didn't want Shin to go to Konoha. Konoha was already in such a state, it couldn't withstand Shin Uzumaki's antics. What if Shin caused trouble and destroyed everything? But then Jiraiya thought, Konoha doesn't really have anything left to destroy. There's no need to be so defensive. And if Shin went with them, it could be a good thing. If they encountered a problem they couldn't solve, Shin Uzumaki could help. This time, they were going to deal with that bastard Danzo. Jiraiya didn't think Danzo would be easy to deal with. After all, Root had many powerful ninja. Chapter 426, Danzo makes his move. This is Konoha? Nawaki stared at the current state of Konoha, dumbfounded. Where's the village? It was completely in ruins. The rebuilding efforts were underway. With ninja helping, the reconstruction was fast, but it would take time to restore Konoha. Regretting it now? Shin asked Nawaki. Jiraiya looked at Nawaki nervously. Don't regret it now. If Nawaki backs out and doesn't want to be Hokage, who will take over this mess? Jiraiya just wanted to find someone to take over Konoha's mess. He had never wanted to be Hokage in the first place, he'd only taken the position out of necessity. Now that he'd finally found this guy Nawaki, and he had agreed, he couldn't let him back out after seeing this sight. No regrets. Nawaki took a deep breath and said seriously. He wouldn't regret it easily. Good, I won't say more. But your trouble is about to arrive. Shin said calmly to Nawaki and Jiraiya. Our trouble? Jiraiya looked at Shin, confused. But then, Jiraiya knew what trouble he meant. He saw Danzo approaching with Root members, and they didn't look friendly. Jiraiya! You dare show your face here? Danzo looked at Jiraiya coldly, as if Jiraiya had committed some great crime. Danzo, what do you mean? Jiraiya didn't understand what Danzo meant, but he knew Danzo was looking for trouble. Jiraiya had expected Danzo to cause trouble, but he hadn't expected Danzo to confront him right after he returned. This made Jiraiya a bit angry. Humph. You murdered the two elders, and you have the nerve to ask me? Danzo snorted angrily. I killed the two elders? Are you saying Hamura Mitokado and Koharu Utatane are dead? Jiraiya's eyes widened in shock. He stared intently at Danzo. His intuition told him that the deaths of Hamura and Koharu were definitely related to Danzo. It was very likely Danzo who had killed them. And now he was trying to frame him, pushing all the blame onto him. How utterly shameless. Shin Uzumaki, this is a Konoha matter. Stay out of it, Danzo said, glancing at Shin. He hadn't expected Shin Uzumaki to come, and with Jiraiya. Danzo didn't want his plans to be ruined by Shin Uzumaki. Is that a threat? Shin's smile vanished, his expression turning icy. Danzo has the guts to threaten him? Who gave him the courage? Danzo's expression stiffened. Although he wanted to say yes directly, facing Shin Uzumaki, Danzo couldn't be so bold. He wanted to be bold, but he was wary of Shin's strength. After all, Shin could wipe him out in minutes. This is Konoha's affair. Outsiders shouldn't interfere. Danzo said to Shin, his tone somewhat weak. Danzo was a bully who feared the strong. Facing Shin, he became cautious. No. I have strength. Even if I want to interfere, what can you do? Shin looked at Danzo calmly. Danzo subconsciously clenched his fists, his expression darkening. In the end, he suppressed his anger. What could he do if he didn't suppress it? Attack Shin Uzumaki? If he was truly stronger than Shin Uzumaki, Danzo wouldn't hesitate to attack. But even with Shirsue's Mangekyo Sharingan, Danzo wasn't confident he could defeat Shin. Jiraiya, you killed the two elders who had a conflict with you. I'm placing you under arrest. Resist, and you'll be killed. Danzo stopped getting angry with Shin and turned his attention to Jiraiya. Pick on the weak one. Shin Uzumaki was a tough nut to crack. Besides, Danzo didn't plan to target Shin, so he could only target Jiraiya. Who made Jiraiya relatively easy to bully? Yes, the current Jiraiya was indeed easy to bully. His injuries hadn't healed, and his strength was probably less than that of an elite jonin. Strike while he's down. Danzo was very good at picking his moments. If Jiraiya hadn't left Konoha to find Shin, he would be dead by now, killed by Danzo's root. Danzo, don't think I don't know. You killed Hamura Midokado and Koharu Utatane, didn't you? Jiraiya looked at Danzo coldly. Humph. Nonsense. They were my friends. Why would I kill them? On the contrary, you had a conflict with them. Who else could it be but you? Danzo's words made the gathered Konoha ninjas somewhat believe him. Did the Hokage really kill the two elders? I believe Lord Hokage would never do such a thing. Kakashi was the first to speak up for Jiraiya. Kakashi spoke up, first because he knew what kind of person Danzo was, and second because he knew Jiraiya's character. Danzo glanced at Kakashi. Fine, Kakashi. After this is over, I'll send you to reunite with your father. For Danzo, anyone who didn't listen to him or agree with him had only one path, death. Am I being ignored? Nawaki asked Shin with frustration. There's a reason you're being ignored. Who even recognizes you now? Shin glanced at Nawaki and said. Who recognized Nawaki now? The younger generation of ninjas certainly didn't. Even Danzo might not recognize him. His appearance had changed too much, and he was unkempt. So, not many people could recognize him. Danzo, I know you want to be Hokage. But I never thought you'd kill Hamura Midokado and Koharu Utatane for it. Jiraiya never thought Danzo would be so crazy. He killed his fellow students and now wanted to attack him. Was the Hokage position that important to him? Important? Of course, it was important. More important than anything. It had become Danzo's obsession. Still accusing me? Attack! Danzo didn't want to talk anymore. He ordered his root subordinates to attack, to kill Jiraiya first. Shin Uzumaki was here now. He didn't know what Shin would do, what his thoughts were. So he had to strike first, to eliminate Jiraiya. Once Jiraiya was gone, he could deal with Shin. Jiraiya was the biggest obstacle to Danzo's ambitions. Nawaki, I'll have to rely on you, Jiraiya said with a wry smile to Nawaki. To deal with Danzo and Root now, he had to rely on Nawaki's help. Jiraiya was too severely injured. Facing Danzo and his subordinates, he was no match. After all, Danzo was also very strong. Chapter 427, Nawaki vs. Danzo. Jiraiya looked at Nawaki with hopeful eyes. He knew he couldn't ask Shin Uzumaki to intervene, Shin likely wouldn't. Only Nawaki could possibly persuade Shin. All right. Nawaki didn't hesitate. Danzo was his enemy too. This wasn't just about helping Jiraiya, it was about avenging himself. He instantly appeared in front of Jiraiya, kicking away one root ninja and killing another with a Rasengan. His movements were clean and decisive. One was kicked to death, the other had his face smashed in by a Rasengan. The remaining root ninja were stunned. Your Nawaki Senju? Danzo finally recognized Nawaki, and only because Jiraiya had called out his name. Danzo, I have a score to settle with you. Nawaki's eyes burned with suppressed rage. The memory of his near-death experience and being branded a missing nin, all Danzo was doing, fueled his anger. Humph. Jiraiya, so you're colluding with a missing nin? What do you have to say for yourself now? Danzo snorted, turning his attack on Jiraiya. Jiraiya remained expressionless. Danzo was a dead man anyway, there was no point getting angry with him. Even if Nawaki couldn't defeat Danzo, Jiraiya was confident Shin Uzumaki would step in and finish the job. That was why Jiraiya was so calm. The outcome was already decided. Nawaki, you handle Danzo. Don't worry about these roots, small fry, Shin said to Nawaki. Hearing Shin's words, Danzo felt a chill. He had forgotten about Shin Uzumaki, but now he realized he couldn't afford to. Given Shin Uzumaki's relationship with Nawaki Senju, if Nawaki fought him, Shin would definitely intervene. All right. I'll leave it to you, then. Nawaki knew Shin would handle the other root members. This was good. He wasn't entirely confident he could defeat Danzo alone. With Root's help, his chances would be even slimmer. Nawaki charged towards Danzo. The Root Ninja tried to move, but in that instant, a kunai pierced each of their necks. No one saw when the kunai struck. All the Root members, including the elite Jonin, were killed by a single, small kunai. An elite Jonin killed by a kunai, it was a tragic end. In the entire shinobi world, few elite Jonin died in such a way. After all, elite Jonin were seasoned veterans, the backbone of the shinobi world. Damn it! Danzo blared at Shin with hatred. His carefully trained subordinates had all been killed by Shin Uzumaki. Though he hadn't seen Shin attack, who else could have killed all his root members in an instant? Only the unfathomable Shin Uzumaki could do it. Heh, just impotent rage, Shin said calmly, watching the furious Danzo. He had initially planned to kill Danzo himself, but decided to let Nawaki handle it. Nawaki, don't tell me you can't even handle one Danzo. If you can't even beat him, that would be too embarrassing, Shin said to Nawaki. I will definitely kill Danzo. Nawaki attacked, using a water-style jutsu against Danzo. Nawaki's specialties were water and earth release, along with the Rasengan Shin had taught him. He also possessed immense chakra, a benefit of his sage body. Nawaki's taijutsu was also strong. Overall, among Kage-level shinobi, Nawaki's strength was top tier, at least stronger than Danzo's. However, Danzo had many tricks up his sleeve, especially Hashirama's cells in Sharingan, and the ultimate suicidal technique, the reverse four symbols sealing technique. So, in a real fight, Nawaki couldn't be said to have a guaranteed win. Wood release, tree root burial. At this point, Danzo no longer held back. His right arm produced tree roots that swept towards Nawaki, while also enveloping himself. How? Nawaki's eyes widened in shock. This was wood release. How could Danzo use wood release? Stunned, Nawaki froze for a moment. That idiot! Hurry up and dodge! Shin's exasperated reminder snapped Nawaki out of it. He barely managed to dodge, a close call. He had almost been trapped. Is he trying to kill himself too? Jiraiya was stunned, watching Danzo attack himself. Was he that ruthless? Danzo had his Inagi, of course he would be fine, and with 10 Sharingan on his arm, he could afford to use it. You dodged? Impressive. Danzo's face was grim. An attack that cost a 3-tomo Sharingan had been dodged. Thank goodness Shin reminded me, or I would have been done for. Nawaki sighed in relief. He had almost been killed. Humph. Let's see how you dodge this. Danzo used wood release again, instantly creating a massive tree that shot towards Nawaki. Don't get stunned by his pathetic wood release again, Shin reminded Nawaki. Nawaki blushed slightly. Don't worry. I won't make the same mistake twice, Nawaki said confidently to Shin. Good. Shin shrugged. He had already warned Nawaki. Water style, hard vortex water blade. Nawaki used this S-rank water release ninjutsu with extreme piercing power, thrusting it towards Danzo. It pierced through Danzo's wood release and impaled Danzo himself. Is it over already? Nawaki felt it was a bit too easy. Wind style, vacuum sphere. The Danzo Nawaki had pierced suddenly appeared behind him, spewing bullet-like airwaves from his mouth. Substitution jutsu. Sensing danger, Nawaki quickly used the substitution jutsu, but his arm was still hit by Danzo's ninjutsu attack. Damn it! Nawaki clutched his arm, blood seeping from the wound. Though not a major injury, it still affected his combat ability. Crucially, Danzo seemed completely unharmed. Actually, Danzo's situation wasn't as good as it seemed. He wasn't injured, but he had consumed a lot of chakra. Nawaki had truly pierced him earlier, but he had used Izanagi to reverse it. And using Izanagi twice consumed a significant amount of chakra. Danzo's own chakra reserves weren't large, just average. He couldn't afford such high consumption. Chapter 428, Danzo's Death. Nawaki retreated to Shin's side, not rashly attacking Danzo again. Shin, what's going on with Danzo? Nawaki was confused. He had clearly pierced Danzo's real body, not a substitution or shadow clone. Why had Danzo suddenly appeared behind him? Izanagi, one of the ultimate dojutsu of the Uchiha clan. It can turn the user's injuries, including death, into a dream. Shin didn't hesitate to explain to Nawaki. That powerful? But how did Danzo get the Uchiha clan's dojutsu? Nawaki was even more bewildered. It's simple. Just transplant a Sharingan. A 3-tomo Sharingan is enough to use Izanagi. Shin looked at Nawaki as if he were an idiot. Can't you even guess that? You're really too dumb. And he can use wood release because he transplanted Hashirama's cells, Shin added, resolving Nawaki's earlier confusion about Danzo's wood release. What? Nawaki's anger surged. It seemed he had another reason to kill Danzo. This time, Danzo had to die. How do you break Izanagi? Nawaki asked Shin. Turning injuries and even death into a dream? That was too broken. With that ability, it seemed impossible to harm the user. Without breaking this technique, killing Danzo was impossible. It's simple. Though Izanagi is powerful, it costs one Sharingan to use, and each use lasts at most 60 seconds. Shin told Nawaki all this information, lest Nawaki fall into a trap. Actually, Izanagi didn't always last only 60 seconds. Obito Uchiha, for example, could maintain it for 3 minutes. But Danzo's chakra was insufficient, he could only maintain it for 60 seconds. Shin Uzumaki. Danzo blared at Shin with fury. Shin had revealed all his secrets. Even if he defeated Nawaki this time, he wouldn't have a place in Konoha anymore. Transplanting Hashirama's cells in the Sharingan was a scandal. The Konoha ninja wouldn't tolerate it. Transplanting the Sharingan might be acceptable, but Danzo had touched Hashirama's cells. This was a grave offense. Koto Amatsukami. The furious Danzo removed the bandage from his right eye and used Koto Amatsukami on Shin. Danzo's right eye was Shursui Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan. Its ocular power was formidable, not comparable to an average Sharingan. You think that'll work on me? Shin sneered dismissively. But since Danzo dared to attack him, Shin wouldn't let him off. His ocular power materialized into a tangible impact, directly shattering Danzo's Mangekyo Sharingan. A bloody line appeared on Danzo's right arm, and the arm fell to the ground. No one saw how Shin attacked. Danzo's Sharingan and right arm were both destroyed. The wound on his right arm looked as if it had been cut by a sharp blade. It was cut by a sharp blade. Shin had used his invisible repulsive force to form a blade and severed Danzo's arm. With his right arm, which had Hashirama's cells in Sharingan, severed, and his Mangekyo Sharingan destroyed, Danzo's means were mostly crippled. Impossible. I used Izanagi. How could you hurt me? Why didn't Izanagi work? Danzo roared like a mad dog. Heh, why should I answer that question for you? Shin chuckled coldly. Weren't you supposed to not interfere and let me deal with Danzo? Nawaki looked at Shin with frustration. He attacked me. And when did I promise you that? I don't recall, Shin asked, looking at Nawaki with feigned confusion. I guess you didn't. Nawaki scratched his head awkwardly, then quickly said, let me deal with Danzo now. I want to kill him with my own hands. Nawaki clenched his fists. Transplanting his grandfather's cells, this was desecrating his grandfather's body. Nawaki would never forgive Danzo. Whatever. I'm not interested in fighting him anyway. Shin said calmly. If Danzo hadn't attacked him, Shin wouldn't have bothered with him. Cold sweat dripped from Danzo's forehead. He wanted to pick up his severed arm from the ground, but before he could touch it, it was engulfed in black, inextinguishable flames. This black, inextinguishable flame was, of course, the Amaterasu black flames. Since I've already cut it off, don't even think about getting it back, Shin said with a cold smile. Damn you, Shin Uzumaki! I'll kill you! Danzo roared, his remaining left eye bloodshot, as if it would pop out. Ha ha ha! That's the funniest joke I've heard. Shin laughed heartily. In this pathetic state, you're still talking about killing me? I don't know where Danzo gets the confidence to say such things. Danzo, your opponent is me. Nawaki rushed towards Danzo with a kunai, lest Danzo continue to court death. If he truly angered Shin and was killed by him, Nawaki wouldn't be able to get his revenge personally. So, Nawaki interrupted Danzo's suicidal behavior. Danzo couldn't perform one-handed seals. Now that Shin had severed one of his arms, he couldn't even use ninjutsu. He couldn't summon his summoning beast either. And even if he could, it would just be another death. Danzo possessed a summoning beast, the Baku, a legendary dream-eating beast. But it had obvious weaknesses and was easy to deal with. Even his final, suicidal sealing jutsu, the reverse four symbols sealing technique, couldn't be used now. He couldn't form the hand seals with one arm. Die! After a brief struggle, Nawaki plunged a kunai into Danzo's heart. The so-called darkness of Konoha, the man responsible for countless tragedies, was finally dead. After killing Danzo, Nawaki let out a breath. He hadn't expended much energy in this fight. He'd only been slightly injured earlier because he didn't know Danzo's abilities. Later, Shin had crippled most of Danzo's power, making it easy for Nawaki to kill him. It's good that he's dead. Danzo was a cancer hindering Konoha's development. Jiraiya looked at the dead Danzo, feeling quite happy. When he was Hokage, Danzo had caused him no end of trouble. Jiraiya had only tolerated Danzo for the sake of the bigger picture, to avoid turmoil in Konoha. Now that Danzo was finally dealt with, and Konoha was about to welcome a new Hokage, perhaps this was a new beginning for the village. Jiraiya choosing Nawaki to be Hokage was also a calculated move. With Nawaki's relationship with Shin, after Nawaki became Hokage, Konoha would be truly safe. At least they wouldn't have to worry about being targeted by Shin Uzumaki. If Konoha faced a crisis in the future, they might even be able to ask Shin Uzumaki for help. This was Jiraiya's calculation. From the beginning, when he asked Nawaki to be Hokage, Jiraiya had already considered all this. Chapter 429, Your Earning Speed is Too Fast. With Danzo and the two elders dead, Jiraiya's announcement that Nawaki would become Hokage was met with little resistance. There was no opposition. Jiraiya officially cleared Nawaki's name as a missing nin, blaming everything on the deceased Danzo. It wasn't exactly framing Danzo was indeed responsible. He wasn't taking the fall for someone else this time. Next was the Hokage inauguration ceremony. Given Konoha's current state, it was a simple affair. Nawaki smoothly became the sixth Hokage, grinning so wide he looked like an idiot. He's grinning like a fool for a while. He must have lost his mind, Shin couldn't help but comment. Well, I should be heading back. Shin prepared to leave Konoha and return to the land of whirlpools. Wait, Shin. Are you leaving? Shin turned to see Nawaki running towards him. Of course I'm leaving. Did you think you could convince me to stay for dinner? He said, annoyed. Haha, actually, I wouldn't mind treating you to dinner, Nawaki said with a grin. Hearing this, Shin narrowed his eyes. Something's off. This can't be good. Spit it out. What do you want? Tell me now before I leave. And as for dinner, forget it. He'd rather eat Makoto's cooking. Nawaki was broke, whatever he could afford wouldn't be worth Shin's time. All right. I was hoping you could help me rebuild Konoha. You can use wood release, right? It should be easy for you. Nawaki said, shamelessly. Fine. But what's my payment? Shin crossed his arms, smiling at Nawaki. Payment? Nawaki's expression stiffened. Konoha was broke, waiting for the daimyo's funding. How could they pay Shin? Are you kidding me? If there's no payment, do you expect me to work for free? Shin never did business at a loss. Though there was no loss here, he still expected a fee for his labor. Nawaki gritted his teeth and held up 5 fingers. How about this much? 500 million ryo? I suppose that's acceptable. Wait, not 500 million. 50 million. Nawaki quickly corrected. Goodbye. Shin wasn't going to waste his time. 500 million was already a friendly price. 50 million? That was just insulting. Rebuild Konoha yourself. I'm out. Wait. 500 million it is. Nawaki quickly grabbed Shin, stopping him from leaving. If Konoha rebuilt on their own, it would cost at least 1 billion ryo. For your sister's sake, I'll help. Now, pay up. Shin gestured to Nawaki. He wanted the money up front. He was afraid Nawaki would try to stiff him. I wouldn't cheat you, Nawaki muttered under his breath, then reluctantly handed the money to Shin. The funds had just been allocated by the Land of Fire daimyo. The daimyo knew that without Konoha, his own position would be unstable, so he quickly provided the funds. I've received the money. Now, get everyone out of Konoha. Otherwise, you'll be responsible for the consequences. Shin counted the money. Nawaki didn't short me. Exactly 500 million ryo. Since he'd been paid, it was time to get to work. Nawaki eagerly went to evacuate the villagers. After everyone had left, Shin used Shinra Tensei to level the partially rebuilt structures. Wood-style, serial pillar houses jutsu. In an instant, a village rose from the ground. Nawaki was stunned. It's done already? Just like that? 500 million ryo. I got ripped off, Nawaki couldn't help but complain. Ripped off? If you did it yourselves, it would cost at least 1 billion. And you have the nerve to say you got ripped off? Shin kicked Nawaki. Your earning speed is too fast. Nawaki looked at Shin with envy. He wished he had wood release too. I agree. My earning speed is quite fast. But honestly, money is useless to me. Shin couldn't help but say. Money truly had no use for him. If it's useless, can you give it back to me? Nawaki sidled up to Shin and asked. Get lost. Shin kicked Nawaki away without hesitation. You didn't have to kick me, Nawaki looked at Shin with a resentful expression, like a jilted wife. Shin, disgusted by Nawaki's look, decided to ignore him and return to the land of whirlpools. He had helped Nawaki enough. Now, it was up to Nawaki to handle the rest. Back home, Tsunade asked Shin, what did Jiraiya want? Nothing much. He just wanted me to find Nawaki. Shin didn't hide it from Tsunade. Perhaps Tsunade would be happy to see Nawaki become Hokage. Jiraiya wanted Nawaki to become Hokage. Now, Nawaki is the 6th Hokage of Konoha. Nawaki became Hokage? Seriously? Wouldn't the others in Konoha object? Tsunade was stunned. This was major news. Who would object? Danzo was killed by Nawaki. Hamura Midokado and Koharu Udatane were killed by Danzo. The only one left in Konoha's leadership is Jiraiya. Jiraiya was the one who sought out Nawaki, of course, he wouldn't object. So, there was no opposition. Nawaki killed Danzo? Tsunade was surprised, but also felt a sense of satisfaction. That old geezer was finally dead. I imagine you're happy to see Nawaki become Hokage. Shin looked at Tsunade. Indeed. I remember when he was little, Nawaki's dream was to become Hokage. Now, he's finally achieved it. His dream has been fulfilled, Tsunade nodded. By the way, has Nawaki found a girlfriend? Tsunade asked Shin. No. And it'll probably be difficult now. As Hokage, he'll be swamped with work. No time for romance. Is that so? That won't do. Tell him to step down immediately. Tsunade's expression changed. What Hokage? It wasn't as important as carrying on the family line. Tsunade immediately stood up, ready to storm Konoha and make Nawaki resign. Calm down. Nawaki's not a child anymore. He has his own thoughts. Don't force him. Shin held Tsunade back. Chapter 430, Sasuke Uchiha is a good pawn. Forget it. I won't meddle in Nawaki's affairs. Tsunade sighed and shook her head. That boy had grown up, he wasn't as obedient as he used to be. Talking to him would be pointless. Shin shrugged. Nawaki had dodged a bullet. If Tsunade had gone, Nawaki would have at least gotten a beating. By the way, I also made some money. Shin took out the money he had earned from Nawaki. It was a whopping 500 million ryo. How did you earn it? Kushina came over, asking Shin curiously. Did Shin rob someone? Shin didn't know what Kushina was thinking. If he did, he would have disciplined her without a second thought. The Great Reaper of the shinobi world, robbing people? Impossible. I earned it from Nawaki, Shin explained to Kushina and Tsunade. So Nawaki's money is that easy to earn? Tsunade's eyes flickered. A bold idea suddenly came to her. Should she destroy Konoha and use wood release to earn a fortune? Why wasn't I the one who earned the money? Kushina looked frustrated. She could use wood release too. Hearing Kushina's words, Shin couldn't help but find it amusing. Isn't my money your money? That's right. Your money is my money. So I'll take this. Kushina shamelessly took all the money, not leaving any for Shin. Hey, at least give me some. I earned it. Your money is my money. What do you need it for? What if you use it to chase other women? Kushina shook her head, refusing to give Shin any money. Little miser, Shin couldn't help but say, then took his tea to the courtyard to sunbathe, enjoying a leisurely life. Shin had grown fond of this relaxed lifestyle, but he knew it wouldn't last long. The Akatsuki had already collected 8-tailed beasts. Only the 9 tails remained. Once captured, they could revive the 10 tails. The crucial moment was approaching. But capturing the 9 tails wouldn't be easy. The 9 tails Jinchuriki was Naruto Uzumaki. And Naruto Uzumaki's Hijira chakra had been activated when he was revived by the Sage of 6 Paths. His strength would increase rapidly. The Akatsuki was in a semi-crippled state, a weakened Nagato Uzumaki, a Zetsu who didn't reveal its true strength, and a Bito Uchiha. With this lineup, capturing the 9 tails would be difficult. Obito Uchiha's strength seemed formidable, but without his Mangekyo Sharingan, Obito was at most at the peak of Kage level. He relied on Kamui's intangibility to roam the shinobi world. But Kamui alone couldn't capture Naruto Uzumaki. If Naruto Uzumaki learned Sage Mode now, the Naruto with activated Ajura Chakra would be stronger than Obito. Of course, Obito had the broken Kamui. Naruto Uzumaki definitely couldn't do anything to Obito either. Perhaps knowing the Akatsuki's current strength was insufficient to capture the 9 tails, Obito Uchiha went to find a helper. And the helper he found was Sasuke Uchiha, the one who had killed Orochimaru. Was it really Nagato who killed Itachi Uchiha? Sasuke stared coldly at Obito Uchiha. Of course. But it wasn't just Nagato. Shin Uzumaki also had a hand in it. Obito said sinisterly to Sasuke. Obito planned to use Sasuke Uchiha to get rid of the troublesome Nagato and retrieve his two Rinnegan. He would also trick Sasuke Uchiha into dealing with Naruto Uzumaki and capturing the Ninetales. Perhaps he could even annoy Shin Uzumaki in the process. It was a plan to kill three birds with one stone. Shin Uzumaki? A cold glint flashed in Sasuke Uchiha's eyes, filled with deep hatred. Without Obito's instigation, Sasuke Uchiha already harbored intense hatred for Shin. After all, there was still the grudge from being killed by him before. If not for being revived by the Sage of Six Paths, Sasuke's body would have already started to rot. Seeing the deep hatred in Sasuke's eyes, Obito Uchiha was satisfied. As long as he hated Shin Uzumaki, that was good enough. However, Obito Uchiha didn't want Sasuke to go find Shin Uzumaki now. Going now would be pure suicide. Sasuke still had great value, Obito wouldn't let him die yet. After he was no longer useful, it wouldn't matter if he died. It won't be easy to defeat Shin Uzumaki. Only with the power of the Ten Tails can you defeat him. And the Ten Tails can also revive the Uchiha clan, Obito Uchiha said to Sasuke. Reviving the Uchiha clan with the Ten Tails was, of course, a lie Obito made up to deceive Sasuke. He knew what Sasuke Uchiha cared about most. And before, Obito had told Sasuke Uchiha the whole story of the Uchiha massacre, making Sasuke Uchiha hate Konoha. It had to be said, Obito hadn't learned much else, but he was quite skilled in this aspect. He had learned to manipulate people's hearts. I hope you're not deceiving me. Otherwise, I'll kill you. Sasuke Uchiha threatened Obito, then beckoned to Yugo and Suigetsu Hozuki to leave. Yugo and Suigetsu Hozuki were the companions Sasuke Uchiha had found, one less than in the original story, Karen Uzumaki. After Sasuke Uchiha left, Obito's eyes turned cold, looking at the departing Sasuke Uchiha with ridicule. This was just one of his pawns, and a very useful one at that. Mainly because he was easy to fool. Of course, half of what Obito said was true, so fooling the naive Sasuke was relatively easy. Obito, I don't understand. Why do you want him to deal with Nagato? White Zetsu emerged, asking Obito. Nagato has no more use. It's time for him to die, Obito said calmly. By the way, have you passed on the information from here? Obito asked White Zetsu in the end. Not yet. Why? Good that you haven't. Obito unhesitatingly twisted White Zetsu's neck, killing this White Zetsu clone. It wouldn't be good if you revealed things to Shin Uzumaki, Obito said coldly. Obito didn't trust White Zetsu at all. White Zetsu had told Shin too many things, causing Obito to lose trust in it. In Obito's eyes, Zetsu and Shin were on the same side. So, some things absolutely could not be known by White Zetsu. Today, he had schemed against Shin Uzumaki. What if Shin Uzumaki found out? Would he come looking for trouble? It was very likely, a high probability. So, for safety's sake, he could only kill the White Zetsu clone that had heard these things. It was its own fault for hearing something it shouldn't have. It deserved to be killed. Obito left this place. If nothing unexpected happened, Sasuke Uchiha and his two subordinates should be going to kill Nagato Uzumaki. He had to go see the situation. Nagato Uzumaki could die, but the Rinnegan absolutely could not have any mishaps. That wraps up this part of What If Copy System in Naruto. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.